Hello, hi, and welcome to today's episode of Reminisce with Ash. It's wonderful to be back on this episode. It's actually taken a bit of time for me to recover from the last session. A lot of people say they absolutely loved the session with Maddie, and been obviously getting some great reviews and great feedbacks from people. In fact, you know what, this is like a casual chat show, and obviously I'm trying to create positivity using this show, but there are people who ask me why I couldn't take a lot more questions, ask more about his movies. It's going to continue to happen, right? I will not be able to, hi Santosh, hi, I will not be able to take all the questions. It's never going to happen. And today I'm extremely delighted yet again. This is like basically having back to back blockbusters types. If Maddie is a blockbuster in the movie industry, today's guest is no lesser. He's a blockbuster in the cricketing industry. If you look at it as it is cricket indeed is a $1 billion show, and Harsha Bhogle has been a house to house household name, so to say, as far as cricket goes. A lot of people, in fact, might not know new cricketers coming in to play the game, but they will definitely know who Harsha Bhogle is. And the moment I asked Harsha if he could be on the show, he was more than delighted. He said the show with Sanjay was absolutely great, and he would love to be on the show and be tricked into asking questions and be on the other side of the fence. And this guest is best on your show so far. Oh my God. Okay. Thank you, Gattu. I don't know what your name is, but thank you so much. I'm waiting, and as we're waiting for Harsha to come over, I would speak a few words in Telugu. Right. Okay. Okay, Rahul Patel. Right. I think Harsha. A lot of people might not realize this, but Harsha is actually from Mumbai. He speaks Marathi really well, and he also speaks Telugu really well. I don't need to reiterate the fact that he actually speaks Telugu really well too. So. I am looking forward to this, but more than anything else, I know there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people around who would like to know how Harsha came into broadcasting, and there are so many people who love cricket by yourself, and you will want to get into the sport in some form and make a living for yourself, create something of your sort, create something of your own, and get into the game. Harsha is, as always, extremely disciplined and extremely meticulous. He sent me a request, and thankfully I found him on the top of the list where request to join live is. Harsha, welcome to today's episode of Reminisce with Ash. How are you doing?
I heard you talking highly of my Telugu, so బాగున్నారా అందరూ?
ఎలా ఉన్నారు హర్ష గారు?
Arey, not bad, బాగున్నారా? So I went to Chennai once when I was very young, and I didn't know Tamil, so I used to ask the first person I met in the street, Telugu teriyama? And it's amazing how often they would say yes, and I got by with Telugu. So yeah.
Oh, do you say Telugu teriyama or Telugu telusa?
I was trying to speak my version of Tamil. Someone told me
Tamil. Oh, wow, nice.
So that's all I learned.
So, but how do you say it in Marathi? तू कसा है?
मजेत छान आहे. फक्त इथे सध्या लॉकडाऊन चालू आहे, तर कठीण आहे.
Okay.
That means there's a lockdown going on.
Don't you use the word sangla?
Changla means good. Yeah, changla means good.
Yeah, right.
Achha,
okay.
So being in the Indian team, you're learning Marathi.
No, not just that. I've been having Rohit live. I've been having, Bihari live.
I've been watching. In fact, I was a little apprehensive. So I put out on Twitter, I said, look, I'm up against Ashwin. Do you think I should play late with soft hands, or should I go to the pitch of the ball? And there's one guy sent me a hilarious response. He said, whatever you do at the striker's end is okay. At the non-striker's end, stay within your crease.
I saw that tweet. And actually I thought, okay, I will reply, but I said I will take it on when I meet Harsha this evening.
No, but we are both on the same side on that.
Sure. Actually, you were right behind me when you're commenting on the incidents, right? The commentary box is behind me, so you're safe.
For too many years, people have been sneaking inches and feet.
Yeah, I mean, anyway. There are people who take a moral stance on that, but I mean that's for another day.
Yes, the laws.
Harsha, I'm you know what? I'm so excited about today's episode because the moment I learned more about this series that we're going to talk about, it started like ticking the brain onto what history of cricket would look like, because I'm someone who loves history in general, but history of cricket would look even better. But before I get into that, Harsha, I'd like to ask you a very important question to start off. Tell me, before we start, you are someone who's alien, so to say, into the comm box, right? A lot
Yeah.
of people who have generally been in the comm box have been either former cricketers
Yeah.
or people who've just been hosts. They managed to just host shows or be an anchor or whatever it is. How tough was your journey getting up there?
It would be much tougher if I started now. But remember, when I started, this was just the late Doordarshan era, the early days of TWI, ESPN, Star Sports coming in. There were not that many players doing commentary then. So I think Ravi came in 94. Only Mr. Gavaskar was there. Ravi came in 94 and Sanjay came around 97, 98, I think. So I could get a toe in, especially proper television during the Hero Cup in 93. So I could get a toe in. And so by the time they came and then Sidhu came in 2002, we all had enough time to make our mistakes and look less silly than we would otherwise have. So that was a big advantage.
No, we will revisit that a little a little later. But like I promised all the viewers, shall we go back into this 84-85 series and talk about it? Very interestingly, it's your debut series as well, right?
How old were you, Ash?
I was a twinkle in my father's eyes, My mom and dad got married in 85 December.
So just to put things in perspective, when I have friends who say, I don't remember your mother, who refer to your mother and say, Arey, her son is playing for India, because they used to work in Hindustan Lever.
Yes,
a lot of my friends work in Hindustan Lever. They say, her son is working in, so that's the difference. But yeah, 84, 85, my 84 December, my first test match, I was just a kid. I was what? No, okay, I'll tell you when you doesn't matter. I was 23.
No, but I'll take that pretty easy, because you must have been a kid compared to what you are today. You are a giant of the broadcasting industry, so I'll let you have it.
No, I was 23, knew virtually nothing about television. I'd done a couple of ODIs as like an audition, like a stand-in. I'd done one game in Jamshedpur, one game in Baroda. So I'd done 2-3 ODIs, but this was a completely different experience doing a test match. And if I tell you stories of that test, how broadcast used to be that time, you'll remember your grandmother who would say, in 1 rupee we used to get 16 shares of ghee, 16 kilos of ghee. You'll remember that that time. It was very, very rudimentary. But I mean, everything has to start somewhere.
No, but what was broadcasting like? Because I think even in 84, 85, TV wasn't a thing, right? Not like every household had a TV. Most of cricket viewership was through radio commentary and stuff like that.
It changed about 82. There was an Asian Games in India in 82. And that was the government's big plan to take television everywhere. So every day there was a microwave station coming up. So in 82 was the big government showpiece that we can do the Asian Games in India. So that took television deep. After that, television started coming in, but production was still, I mean, the person who directed that 84 test series for me was a drama producer. He didn't like cricket very much. He didn't like cricket very much. He was a drama producer. He says, give me a play. I will enjoy filming a play. So we would get into the tempo, the Doordarshan tempo, and he would just look around and say, okay, I've got one producer, one cameraman, one commentator, chalo, I can start the telecast. So we didn't have any vision. We would just sit behind the old one. Do you remember the old Wankhede Stadium where there used to be that old Garware clubhouse before the new Wankhede came?
I've stayed at the Garware clubhouse.
So no, that stand just above the side screen where people used to sit, where you had about 12 inches of place or 12 to 18 inches per person. That used to sit there. So if someone behind, he could actually tap you on the head while you're doing commentary. Someone in the crowd. So literally, it was like that 84 game, but it was quite a series.
No, but before you get into the specifics, there are some delightful topics on that particular series to talk about.
Yeah.
I was speaking to my dad, because it was...
You had to say that, no? I was speaking to my dad about those times.
No, because my dad remembers those games really well, because he used to tell me that the 83 World Cup, he ran back home and tapped the transistor on the top of it like 5 times to listen to how Kapil Dev lifted the trophy in the balcony of the Lords and all.
But that was the standard thing with all transistors. You had to hit them on the top or the back.
No, but why I asked about television was because he said if they had to watch a game on television, there used to be this old Solidarity TV where they used to have the blue screen in front, and that TV used to be there one in a street, and the entire community used to flog there. So very clearly, it's very nascent, and the production must have also been nascent because it's what is it like producing? What is it like producing a cricket match? Asha, can you just share something about it?
See, now it's completely different. Now
Okay.
there are flyaway kits. There are guys who rig a telecast. They are superstars. They fly in, they rig in a few hours, and there's 20 odd, 27, 28 cameras. In those days, even BBC used to do 4 cameras, one side coverage. So one side you're seeing the batsman's face, one side you're seeing the bowler's face. You had only one side coverage, even on BBC. So
Right.
Doordarshan was also like that, but the strong lenses hadn't come. So if you see the old footage, it looks like that films division footage. It's very quaint, it's very cute, but you don't get any close-ups.
Right.
And there was hardly any contact with the director. So you were on your own, you were talking about the game, and there were no commercial breaks that time because Doordarshan was still starting out. There were no commercial breaks. So you had a lot to talk, and some radio experience helped. But I'll tell you what, there is a producer, there is a director. Nowadays, there are so many VT operators, and you must see how good they are. The moment something happens, they'll be straight away in the director's ear saying, "This replay is good, this is good, this is good, this is good, this is good." And they know sometimes far more than the third umpire does because the third umpire is seeing what they give, right? So they are so good. Sometimes I think one of them can be a good third umpire.
Oh, hello, Gaurav. Gaurav is here. This is hi to Gaurav Kapoor. This is not Breakfast with Champions. This is my show. So the questions will be mine,
Yes,
Gaurav.
good.
All right.
Correct.
Harsha, so tell me something before we go into much details of the questions that I want to ask. There was the assassination of our Prime Minister just before
Yes.
you made your debut as a
Yes.
broadcaster, right? So how was the situation in the country then?
There was so much tension. As you'd imagine, her own bodyguards have shot her. She was a very charismatic woman. You might have different sides of the political spectrum. She's a very charismatic woman, and your own bodyguards shoot you. So it was, and then there was a lot of violence in the country. There was an anti-Sikh trouble. There were all kinds of things happening, and England were in India. So they went away to Sri Lanka for 2 weeks and played 2 warm-up games there, and then came back in time for the first Test match. I think it was 28th of November. I remember it well because I was allowed to miss my IIM second term exams to come here by a very benevolent director. So they came on 28th November, and the evening before, the British Deputy High Commissioner in Mumbai, in whose house they had gone for a party, the next day he was shot. I don't know why. So this series actually started amidst a lot of uncertainty and well, in a manner of speaking, violence. So there was lots happening around it. November 20th
No,
was still a rest day.
but tell me something. How did the English team continue their tour? Because I remember one of those, the 26-11 attack that happened in
Yes.
Mumbai. There was supposed to be a Champions League tournament right after the
Yes.
IPL.
Yes.
And how did it happen that the England team didn't go back? Because that's like, generally when many of the teams come from the southern hemisphere, they come over. They're usually a little
Yes.
cautious
Very.
to say the least about having a Delhi belly or whatever it is. And they used to come over, and if something of this happened for the first time, they would immediately pack their bags and leave. How did that not happen?
I have no idea. I don't remember all that. But what I do know is they said, okay, till the situation settles down, we'll go to Sri Lanka. So they flew across to Sri Lanka, played, as I said, stayed there for 2 weeks. Then they must have got a guideline saying it's okay to come back now. And remember, the first test was in Mumbai.
Mumbai.
They
Yeah.
didn't go to Delhi till the second test match. The first test was in Mumbai. So it was still relatively safe. Mumbai didn't have much violence. The violence was largely in Delhi. So by then, see, that was 31st October. So by the time the second test in Delhi started, first week of December, it had been a whole month, it had been contained, I think. But yeah, I mean, amazing times.
No, but tell me something. This game that you're speaking about in Mumbai is
Yeah.
a game that I'm actually kind of petrified to talk about because I remember LS talking about this game at least a dozen times during the Test match we played England in 2016. He
Yeah.
told me that you are actually having a good chance of breaking my record at Wankhede. I said, breaking your record? Then he told me about the 12 wickets that he picked up
Yeah.
in that first test against England. What do you remember about the first test, Harsha? Is it more
It
about your
was,
nerves or?
look, my nerves, but there was no in-vision. We didn't know whether we were doing well or no. There wasn't a director in your ear telling you, listen, just be okay, talk a little less, you're going too fast, whatever. No one. So you didn't know whether you're doing well or no. So then suddenly Vijay Merchant came and sat next to us. Now, how do you address Vijay Merchant, right? Do you call
So
him
what did you
sir?
do?
Do you call him Mr. Merchant? GS Ramchand was the expert. What do you call? You can't call him Ram because he's that much older than you. I mean, I once called Mr. Jaisimha Jai in a broadcast in Hyderabad. And my uncle told me, "Acha, so he's your friend, is it? You must show respect to elders." So, because I was that young, those peculiar things used to happen. But Siva was, I mean, I'll tell you, if you've not seen Siva bowl, he had beautiful bowling action, and he was someone who bowled a big leg break, but also bowled a big long one. You don't see too many people, too many leggies who bowl both a big leggy and a fairly big
Googly.
long one. Yeah, and he had come after playing that President's 11 game, under 25 game in Ahmedabad.
That was between India and England, right?
And they won by an innings. And I think Ravi took him off after he took 4 wickets. He took 4 wickets and second Ravi took him off. Because I think by then the word had gone through to SMG was captain that he's going to come. And he had played one test match in the West Indies in '83. So they knew a little bit about him, but it was wonderful watching him bowl.
Yeah. But how was it like, Harsha? Because LBW rules must have not been in place. So, I mean, the front foot, basically, if you got on the front foot, the umpires would have been telling you it's not out. So, how did LS manage to get those wickets, despite having the good wrong one?
Actually, if you see, he's got. If I remember right, there were quite a few, especially the tail. See, that one of the leggies' job is to take the tail anyway, right? So I think he got a lot of leg befores and a lot of skiers. He got a couple of stumpings as well, if I remember right. So, but they could not read him.
Yeah.
And they could not read it. I mean, a lot of Indian batsmen read wrist spin through the hand, right? Or some people say they read it off the revs, as they call it. As an engineer, it's not revolutions but rotations. But they see that coming. But I think a lot of people are not used to leg spin try and read off the pitch. And if you've got nip like Siva did, then it's very difficult to you don't have much time. So by the time they figured him out, he had got 12 wickets in the test match.
No, but just before we proceed, Harsha, were you taking a slight dig at me for calling you Harsha and not call you Harsha, sir?
No,
is that what you're trying to tell me?
Somebody sending you questions down there, I'm sure. No, not at all.
No, it was not somebody. It just kept my mind to proceed from there.
No.
But since you mentioned that under 25 game from where LS had come into the side, there was another left-hander from Tamil Nadu, right? R. Madhavan, who made 100.
Yeah.
There was a message that was scrolling down in the comment section. So, do you know anything about Madhavan?
If you look at that game, see, at that time, I was 22, 23 years old. I played universities at night when I was 20, 21. So Azharuddin was a friend. He was playing in that game. I'd gone to meet him. But in those days, we used to read the entire scorecard in the newspapers. And I was from the South. So I would know. I'd also done scoring 1 year for the entire South Zone Inter-University. So I knew a lot of names. And the name that was making waves, the two names making waves in the South, were Azharuddin and R. Madhavan. There was another NP Madhavan also who played.
Yeah.
But the two names are also Ranjit Khanvilkar, who played for India Schools, another good cricketer. But these two as batsmen, in Hyderabad also they would say, Madhavan, very stylish batsman and whatever. Yeah. And in that game, Azharuddin got 151, R. Madhavan got 103. And Azhar got picked. It's an interesting story that Ravi told me once. You must ask him once the next time you're in a test series together. He was captain of the under 25 side. That under 25 side, Ash, was a fabulous side. I think 9 of them went on to play for India.
Okay.
And SMG called Ravi in Ahmedabad and said, "Who looks ready to you?" Because remember, this is 84, right? Ravi's already been international player 2-3 years. So he said 3 players are ready to play test cricket now. He said Azharuddin is ready, Siva is ready, and Sadanand Vishwanath is ready. Karnataka.
Yeah,
flamboyant, very flamboyant, lovely, everything was larger than life for Vishy. So, and we were about the same age, so we became good friends as well. So these 3 were ready. So Azhar and LS got picked for that test match. Azhar made his debut in Kolkata.
Okay. So what do we know about the team that toured India? I mean, from whatever I've seen, there's not much footage, but there is a footage of the Eden Gardens game on YouTube, where Azhar made his debut and made 100. But what do we know about the English team? Because coming to India and beating India, I know it's early 80s, but still must have been a big deal. They beat us 2-1. Yeah. Phil Edmonds was one of the higher wicket takers. Was it Pocock who was the off spinner who got some wickets?
Pocock was the other off spinner.
Yeah.
They used to make fun of him. He came to play the South Zone versus England game in Hyderabad at Gymkhana ground. So no stands, nothing. And you know how the Hyderabad crowd is. They're very naughty. They can be very naughty. And they would stand as he came to the boundary. And the crowds in those days were something else. They were so close. But Pocock and Edmonds, the guy who took a lot of wickets, played the last 2 tests. It was Neil Foster. Norman Cowans was sharp. So in that first test, they had a swing bowler called Ellison. But remember, England were coming after a 5-0 drubbing by the West Indies. You know what? It's interesting to see. After India won the World Cup of 1983, the whole world wished that India had not won because the West Indies just started beating teams 5-0 after that.
Yeah,
So
they
therefore
were unleashing
5-0.
their anger.
But India had not won a test match since 1981. It's incredible to know. 81 to 84, India didn't win a test match because they went to
Wow.
Pakistan, they went to the West Indies. There was an aborted tour of West India, of Pakistan as well. So India had not won much test cricket by then. Indian cricket was in turmoil because Kapil Dev, in June 1983, Kapil Dev had lifted a World Cup for India. By end 84, he had already been sacked as captain. So if you see the 80s actually started off with Gavaskar being captain, then Kapil Dev, then Gavaskar, then Kapil Dev, then Vengsarkar, then Shastri, then Srikanth, then Azharuddin, all in one decade. So both teams were unsettled. Both teams are very unsettled in that series.
Wasn't another important instance that you also mentioned when we were speaking offline was that Sunil Gavaskar in this particular series wanted to bat middle order. Is there anything? Is there any
In
truth to it?
Kolkata. In
Okay,
Kolkata, see, in those days, he was talking about batting in the middle order. And if you
right.
remember, after this series, India went to Sri Lanka in 85.
Okay,
And he batted in the middle order. Lalchand Rajput opened the batting for India in that series. Gavaskar batted in the middle order. Even that World Championship of Cricket that India won in Australia in 85, Gavaskar was
85.
captain. He batted in the middle order. Srikanth
Right.
and Shastri opened the batting. Gavaskar batted in the middle order. So I think apparently this is what Chandu Bode told me when I was writing a book. That SMG told him that I'll bat in the middle order and Srikanth and Gaikwad can open the batting. So they went and discussed the team at the center by the pitch. That was the only quiet place they said they could talk to each other.
At the Wankhede.
No, in Calcutta, because the Wankhede,
Okay.
Azhar didn't play. Azhar didn't play the first two tests.
Right.
Third test, Sandeep Patil and Kapil Dev were both dropped. That's another story I'll tell you about. Sandeep Patil and Kapil Dev were dropped. And so Azharuddin was picked because Borde said, no, this boy is ready. He'll give you 15, 20 plus in the field every day. I've seen him bat. He's ready. So SMGs wanted to bat in the middle order. So he went back to open the batting and Azharuddin batted at number 5 because Sandeep Patil had been left out.
Yeah, but in that test at Eden Gardens, just when we paused there, Azhar made his debut. He made 100. So did Ravi Bhai. But
Yes.
what about the 3 on the trot, 3 on the bounce for Azhar, right?
Yeah, he got 100 in Kolkata. That
Yeah.
was his debut 100. It was a slow 100. Then I think the fourth was in Chennai.
Right.
The fourth was in Chennai and the fifth in Kanpur. He got 3 in a row. Here's this thin guy. He was so thin he could go through a keyhole. He was that thin. And suddenly 300s and there he is. Went to World Championship of Cricket. By then he'd already moved to 3. He batted 3 for a while. In those days there was Amarnath, there was Vengsarkar, there was Azharuddin, all vying for that number 3 spot. So he moved up to 3, but it was a slow 100. That first one was a very slow 100. And if I remember right, I think he wore a helmet for the first time, I think, in that test match.
You think? But one thing I know for sure is that he was missed. He stepped down the track to Pocock and stumping was missed in the test at Eden Gardens, and he went on to make 100.
I studied Azharuddin's career very closely, obviously, because I wrote his biography in 93, 94. And every big innings that he played, whether it was the Lord's 100 or again Calcutta 100 in 93, when in his second incarnation he was a very free-stroking player, he would get one life early. So I almost called the biography a child of destiny. But then I thought it would have been unfair to a player to say you're a child of destiny. So, but yeah, he was lucky there. Pocock used to be very slow off spinner. You know, he had this slight jump. He would really toss the ball. I've seen Lance Gibbs bowl. Lance Gibbs, Pat Pocock used to toss the ball a lot in those days.
No, but what is it then? Now that you said that, I mean, this was not planned at all. Now that you said that, you say the spinners were really slow through the air. It's very unfair to compare spinners or cricketers across generations. It's not fair at all. The game's evolved so much. But if you had to use the same sort of flight in the modern day game, what would you think would be the the difficulties for such a pace to be bowled in the modern day?
I think with the arrival of the bats and the fact that batsmen played a lot of white ball cricket, the fear of the boundary rope has gone. Earlier, the boundary rope was a disconcerting thing. You know, the boundary rope. So to clear the boundary rope, so I just looked at the scorecard after when you told me you were discussing this. There were only 4 sixes hit in that Bombay test, 3 of whom were hit by Phil Edmonds when he was slogging at the end. Batsmen did not hit sixes. So, because in those days, if the ball didn't go off the sweet spot, then it went up. Yeah, there was a sweet spot for a bat. The whole bat wasn't a sweet spot. There was a sweet spot in the bat. So your footwork was important, placement was important. So there were not many sixes hit then. I mean, when Kapil Dev came in and started hitting big hits, everyone said, "Wow, man, this looks different."
No, in fact, we will get to that Kapil Dev's hit at the
Yeah.
Kotla later.
Yeah.
But the one startling thing that happened when I saw this game at Eden, where Azhar makes his 100, was the fact that the sponsorship boards were missing. There was hardly a sponsorship board on the ground, and if you had to hit a boundary, you basically had to get the ball rolling along the carpet into the crowd. Okay, there were a few occasions where the crowd picked up the ball through that gap at Eden Gardens and threw the ball back in. So
If you
those are
see
the
old,
times.
if you see old footage from England, for example, there's a lot of that going around in the lockdown. You'll see the spectators come running onto the ground, pick up the ball and throw it back even before it has reached the boundary. And they'll do a dance. If you see the West Indian spectators, will pick up the ball, do a dance and throw it back. So can you imagine the fielder I just saw some footage of SNG scoring 100 in the mid 80s, and about 10-15 people had come up and they would garland him and go away, and all kinds of things used to happen, the stoppages. So the spectators were very close to the action. The boundary ropes, I mean, till recently at the Adelaide Oval, you could actually lean on the boundary wall and take a catch, and that was allowed.
Do you remember Rishikesh Kanitkar?
Yeah. So you could actually do that, and the boundary rope was that far back in Adelaide, people would run 5. There is this famous story told about Dilip Sardesai that he was chasing the ball to the boundary, realized it might be a 5, so he kicked it over. So the batsman got 4. I don't know how true it is, but a lot of stories in those days were legend. So, yeah, you were quite close. SMG often told me that he was worried that someone might, if he slapped him on the back to say well played, might have something in his hand that might hurt him.
No, in fact, watching these old footages, one thing that struck me massively was how Sunny Bhai was holding, that, what was that helmet called? It was his own unique style, right?
Yeah, he had devised a skull cap.
Correct. So he used to put the skull cap on top of the bat handle and then raise it up to celebrate. Do you remember that celebration?
A bit, I don't actually, but a bit like what Chris Gayle does now. Chris Gayle
does sort of similar. The only difference is this is a modern day helmet and that's a skull cap. That's the only difference.
So he wore that skull cap and then wore the floppy hat on top of that. Okay. And that skull cap is now in the Lord's Museum. And apparently was told after that skull cap wasn't the cleverest thing to wear. See, in those days, the batsmen who didn't wear helmets were like, wow, man. Helmets came in 78, 79 or so. By mid 80s, everybody was wearing helmets. And people said, you know what, Gavaskar doesn't wear helmet. Viv Richards' life mein helmet nahi pehna. Was a big thing, class. I don't wear helmets. So he devised that skull cap because he said, I didn't have any ego about not wearing a helmet. If it hit me on the head, it hit me on the head, man. So he had devised his own protection to make it comfortable for him. The early helmets were heavy.
Yeah.
So if you're not used to the early helmets, they were.
No, this discussion on this particular series will never get over if I don't ask these two questions. You did tell me that Kapil Paji got dropped a little later in the series for the shot for how he got out in the test and India had lost the test match and so on and so forth. But tell me something about Mohammad Azharuddin himself. You were in Hyderabad. You must have played cricket, whatever cricket you played alongside Azhar or seen him bat. But some of the people that I've spoken to, Harsha, could be from Hyderabad. Not taking names, but they used to tell me Azhar used to bat spin with a stick. Is that true? That if he could actually play anywhere in the field with a stick?
He made his bat look like a wand sometimes. So, I played largely against him. We only played together once when we traveled for the Rohinton Baria universities in Delhi. That's the only time we played in the same side. But mostly we played against each other. So I saw very close up front how he could bat. He would play very late. And once we were chatting, and as an off spinner, you must take offense to this. But he asked me once, he said, Chalo, I'm asking you one question today. He said, Mere ko bolo off spinner kai ko rehta team mein. So I said, kai ko rehta means? I said, bat pad nikal sakte, dusra edge nikale to slip mein catch nikal sakte. Apne Indian pitches, when they start to turn, finger spinner does well. He said, nahi, dusre team ko over mein 4 run milna. He said, to guarantee the opposition batsman 4 runs per over, he said, just take one. You play very late. And he was one of the few people I saw who routinely played against the turn because he would wait for the ball turn and dab it to point, dab it to cover. He was very good running between wickets. But he was a fantastic player. See, in those days, if you were not a good player of spin bowling, you had no chance.
No chance, yeah.
And a lot of these guys, like Lakshman afterwards, all grew up on matting wickets. They're all matting wicket batsmen. A lot of people, I don't know if in Tamil Nadu earlier in Chennai, Chennai was one of the earliest teams actually places to have a lot of turf wickets.
Yeah.
But Hyderabad, everything was matting. So all these guys came up playing matting wickets. But he became a far more aggressive batsman afterwards.
No,
But he was
Chennai.
great.
Interesting that you pointed out Chennai. Chennai is one of those places where you get a lot of cricket romanticism, right? There is a lot of cricket romanticism around the country, but we take it one step. We take it very personally and one step higher. There is a ground by the beach here called the Marina. I'm
Yes.
sure you must have seen it
Know
on
of
the
the
way
Marina.
going to Chepauk. And there is this one person who's there in that Marina grounds, who's like the in charge of the ground facility and all that. And till today, he shows a place on the wall towards the right hand side of the ground and says that's where a boundary was hit by Sunil Gavaskar when he came to play the Buchi Babu Trophy.
Yeah.
You know?
Buchi Babu was big, by the way.
Oh, unbelievable, without a doubt. In fact, that's how I was brought up, saying playing Buchi Babu was, a destination sort of a thing. But Harsha, coming back to the topic itself.
I'll tell you very quickly, there were two big tournaments in the south that time. One was Moinuddin in Hyderabad that we all grew up watching, and Buchi Babu there. And there was a fantastic Sri Lanka versus Tamil Nadu tournament called for the
Gopalan
Trophy. It was a really good tournament. So many people came up from that. Anyway, yeah, we can talk about this forever.
No, but tell me something. Why? Everybody has heard the story of how Kapil Paji was left out of the side. I think that was the first time he was ever left out of a team, an Indian cricket team. There are a lot of people who speculate so many other things. In fact, I've heard my dad talk about it as well. But tell me something. Why exactly did that happen? Was it related to a series loss?
See, India had won the first test in Bombay. Second test, if I remember, I looked at some of the cards. At lunch on the last day, India 100 ahead, 6 wickets in hand. So really, all you had to do was bat another hour or so. In those days, nobody scored that quickly. If you batted another hour and a half, and built up a lead of 180, or forget 180, 140, 150. After tea, 140, 150 was tough to chase in those days on a last day pitch. But after lunch, India lost 30 for 6. Sandeep Patil was a very aggressive batsman. He played a big shot. Kapil Dev came, played a big hit, caught on the boundary. Next thing you know, everybody's out. The selectors were very angry. I think Bishan Bedi was chairman of selectors, might have been, because so soon after he retired. And there was a lot of huge controversy then about whether Gavaskar engineered Kapil Dev's dropping. And he goes to great lengths even today to say that by the time he got to the got to the selection committee meeting after the Delhi test, it was a fait accompli. They had decided, and because they wanted to give Kapil tell Kapil Dev that's not how you play. He's your World Cup winning captain, don't forget. So they had to leave out Sandeep Patil as well. And so that's how Azharuddin and might have been Manoj Prabhakar played in Calcutta. But that created a huge controversy that rocked Indian cricket for a very long time. And luckily, we didn't have very loud news anchors in those days. Otherwise, the news would have been full of it.
No, in fact, just clearing the air, these sorts of things where differences created between the teammates don't often happen because of the team itself. Because I've been in a team for a while, and I'm telling you, these things are generally driven far by the environment that exists outside. One could be the media, and the other people who pass on information into the ears of different cricketers for I don't know what benefits of it. But these are all, I used to see a lot of talk in the social media and stuff like that about cricketers inside the team. And then I used to go wondering, say, really? Okay. And that's how you used to feel about it. And then that's sort of, really unhealthy to try and spoil the team environment, so to say. But
don't forget, and don't forget the television commentators were not influencers in those days, because there would be a different commentator for every test match. I did one test match in 1984. That's it. Every test there was a different commentator. And there was no social media. The newspaper reporters would create opinion. So suppose someone in the team got friendly with them and just left one little pillow, one story there. They would make up a big story, big rift in team, Gavaskar, Kapil Dev don't like each other. Now we have no way of checking that, right? So these stories would spread through word of mouth. And you know how word of mouth, it starts X and ends Y.
And I think I know who you're talking to also. We'll do it offline. But you actually spoke about it rightly here, Harsha. My first memory of Harsha Bhogle was this huge glasses. Do you still have those glasses?
I have photographs of those, but
it's very unfair that you're not. No, but you should have actually kept it in your, the trophy shelf or something like that. It's something that's iconic as far as I can remember. But my first memory was you doing commentary on TV. It must have been ESPN, and these 20-minute snippets of Ranji Trophy, Dulip Trophy,
Yes.
and all that used to happen. And that's where I first heard of Raman Lamba and all these first-class cricketers,
Yeah.
Paras Mahambre. Tell me, how was broadcasting like? How did you do those 20 minutes? Did you watch the match live or how was it?
You will not believe the real story. There was a young producer who had just come from England to work for TWI here called Peter Hutton. He is now head of Facebook Sport in the US. So Peter would take 4 cameramen and go to the game. One day, none of the cameras worked till the start of the 3rd day. So the highlights only started from the 3rd day. So he would go, he would film the game. He would film the game, no switching. He would film the game and come back. The switching came, I think, as you went along. Come back, edit the whole thing. After editing that, I would go from Bombay to Delhi on a Sunday morning, do commentary on, he would edit it to 1 hour highlights. We would do commentary on the highlights. We didn't do commentary on the game. We did commentary on the edited highlights. So the big thing there was, if your voice went over into the next shot, you know that the commentary is being done in post. Because there's a jump, right? You're batting 22. I'm saying Ashwin's played a great cover drive. Next shot, you're 34. So the voice cannot go into that. So we had to do commentary on the highlights. So I would do commentary all by myself on the highlights, edited highlights, and started in '94.
So just for viewers' knowledge here, Harsha, how much did you get paid in those days? Just for knowledge's sake, for doing a commentary.
When we first started, we would get I used to get 7,500 rupees initially when I was doing Ranji Trophy games. But when TWI came to India, the first deal they offered was $100 a day. Dollar was 35 that time. I thought they're nuts. I thought they'd gone mad. I thought maybe they'll correct themselves midway through and say we're paying too much. So I went to the Hero Cup in '93. They were paying $100, and I said, forget $100, man. I'm staying in Taj, Bengal for 3 days. It was like, wow. I told Anita, we're going. I said, you know what? I'm going to stay in Taj, Bengal for so many days. I don't care. And someone told me, how can you work for only $100? I said, shh, don't tell them. I would gladly give the $100 back and pay them to be able to do that game, through that series. But it was about, about that much. And then for doing these highlights, it used to be like a package. I would literally park my car. I had one small 800 that time, 800 or Zen something. I would park at Bombay Airport, take the first flight, go across to Delhi, do commentary on 3 matches, and come back from Delhi. Okay. So, but because of that, what happened was interesting. I got to know domestic cricket well. If you're a broadcaster in India, you have to know domestic cricket. You have to know who are the best players in domestic cricket. And I'll tell you a little story. Rahul Dravid was just coming up, 94, right? 93, 94. He played a few seasons, but he was starting to make a name. And his father was the mildest, politest human being you will ever meet. And he would say, if it is not a trouble, can I see the highlights of my son's batting? 1 camera, 2 cameras. So it was a standard thing. Every time we covered Rahul Dravid's game, there used to be one VHS tape going across to Mr. Sharad Dravid. VHS tapes. Oh, everything on VHS. All VHS tapes going across.
That's so sweet. That's so. Yeah. I'll ask Rahul when I actually meet him the next time.
Yeah.
But
his father was a gentleman.
I've heard. It's unfortunate I haven't met him. But just moving on from there, Harsha, clearly broadcasting has changed, right? Yeah. From talking about the game, just explaining what you're watching, to actually getting onto a position where you're commenting and making, like you said, those days commentators were not opinion makers. So there is a clear giveaway that today commentators have become opinion makers. And I personally feel, Sanjay didn't agree with me, but they do influence selection in a very indirect way. So how much of this obsession with talking and dissecting techniques of players is warranted in this modern day? Is it a cutting edge that a commentator needs, or is it something that's just been blown out?
First thing about being opinion makers, I would be very disappointed if a selector was influenced by a commentator into making a decision. I'd be disappointed, because it's not a job of a selector to get swayed by what a commentator is saying. So I hope selectors watch matches on mute, or maybe if they have their favorite commentators. By the way, in the early days, the third umpire would be in the commentary box and listening to the commentary while he was making a decision. The early days of the third umpire.
Sorry, Harsha, I don't want to interrupt, but because you said that, I'm just giving you a clarity. I know that selectors cannot get, swayed up by what the commentator is saying. But this morning, Preeti and I were actually sitting in the lounge, and we were thinking we should have something different. Okay. And immediately she swiped open this app on, the phone, and there was this advertisement just popping up saying, Rajma Chawal, Dam Aloo, rajma chawal, dum aloo. And you know what? We had it. So in as much as as much as you say that you don't necessarily shouldn't happen, it does happen. It's sugar coated.
Yeah. I believe I saw your program with Sanjay, and I agreed with him to the extent that I think the role of a commentator can get overstated. But I hope it doesn't come to a stage where. But now you know what's happened. All the big players come into commentary boxes so soon, right? Say a few years from now, you come straight into a commentary box. I'll tell you. I'll talk about that before we finish on what I foresee. But you are in close touch with the game. So suppose you say, look, I've been playing with Kuldeep Yadav for a long time, and I know his strengths, weaknesses. The selector is going to listen. So that, to some extent, it is inevitable. But about technique, there are many different kinds of people who watch a telecast. There are the very solid cut-off former players who will watch and say, hey, my front foot is not reaching to the pitch of the ball, man. Crease mein atka hua hai. So they want to hear SMG do that. SMG did a fabulous deconstruction of Virat Kohli's cover drive one day. But we can overdo that because a lot of people are tuning in to listen to the story of the game. I still remember we had a few years ago when Star had become Star India, not ESPN Star, and they had done a huge amount of research. And Uday Shankar, the head of Star, said, by the way, he said, I must tell you what our research is showing. He said, you guys very casually say that square legs will move a touch finer. Bowlers getting good bounce, he's quick, square legs will move a touch finer. He said, they have no idea. Vast majority have never been to a ground. So if you say square leg has moved finer, they don't even know. So ask yourself, who are you doing commentary for? Who is your audience? So the audience is many people. So if I am doing commentary, my audience is not you. Because my audience cannot be you, because if I say, listen, he's reaching out to the ball, he's leaving a gap that's opening up with a fourth-way track, the ball might squeeze in, he might get a bolt coming through, whatever. You might say, excuse me, but I'd much rather Gavaskar said that. Or I'd much rather Shastri said that when he was in the commentary box. But there's also the other person who wants to know, why did Ashwin become a good bowler? Where was Ashwin before he came? What is the story of Ashwin coming up? Did he really play tennis ball cricket? So there is that audience as well. So I think a commentator must be aware of which audience he's catering to. So if you only talk technique, you lose a lot of people. But you need to have technique. It's like you're a film critic. You're a film critic, you must understand shot making, you must understand editing, you must understand use of background music. You must understand it, but you must know what your role in the commentary box is. And that is why I've been a big fan of having a caller and a summarizer, caller and expert working together.
Now, that's totally interesting that you said that, because I don't even have to think back about what my lead on question is, because you just lead me on there, right? You just said that it's very important to know who the audience are, all right? I was speaking to Sanjay the other day, where he was telling something, but he didn't get this piece of the puzzle in. And then the last show, I was speaking with Madhavan, where I asked him, where goes the responsibility for an actor or an artist of having a social responsibility in terms of leading the audience in the right direction? And he made an unbelievable statement. He said, you know what? Our win is in the box office. What film delivers is our win. And we cannot keep looking at it, because it's a business and it's end of the day an entertainment industry. So is it safe to assume that the commentary belongs to the entertainment industry and the game is representing the entertainment industry, and players sometimes read too seriously into what the entertainment industry is doing?
It depends on what the entertainment is. Cricket by itself is, to my mind, entertainment enough. So right. The whole ebb and flow of a cricket match, the whole uncertainty of a live game, it's the only thing in the world where you don't know what's happening next. Cricket is, as I tell people, almost entirely unscripted. It's very, very unscripted. You don't know what is going to happen next. You, as a lead actor playing the game, also do not know what is happening next. So True. That is entertainment in itself. So sometimes you need, for example, when Ajay Jadeja is playing Piyulud Zairesi, he always smiles. And Sanjay would tell me that I would be very serious on TV, man. Ajay Jadeja always smiled. So you'll have people now, they'll wear a tattoo. And now in the Instagram generation, everyone will show them. So they are now becoming showbiz, especially after social media. Cricket and showbiz always had a connection, the Jaisema's, Duranis, Pataudi's dashing generation, they were
Make,
showbiz.
make
So
no
now it's
mistake that
more.
I am not. I agree, it is entertainment. Cricket is entertainment. I'm not turning my head off that at all. I'm just asking, could we then see the cricket as the movie and the commentators as this? I mean, I don't know if people, I don't want
Yeah.
people to get offended. Commentary is probably the storyteller here, the script writer who's not available to the audience. And most often than not, the audience are not relating to the people doing the backdoor work, right? But
Yeah.
here, the audience are listening to you. The people who are doing the backdoor work are being listened to, and there are opinion makers. And players sometimes tend to get offended of what the commentators are saying because of who they are and because of their longevity in that industry. So there needs to be a connection. Is it players that need to be more aware of this and know how to deal with it?
Yes, and you must build a lot of credibility as well as a broadcaster, because if you're saying something, people must believe you. So to that extent, yes, the commentator must have a lot of credibility. See, the commentator's job also is to tell people what is happening and why and how. As a radio broadcaster, it is to tell only what is happening. Because as a radio broadcaster, you're the eyes of the listener.
The audience.
He's not watching the game. You're the eyes. You have a huge responsibility to be truthful on a radio commentary. On a television commentary, you don't have to say what as much as the how or why. But there are still people, we all watch the game irrationally sometimes. We have our theories. And we want to know whether the commentator agrees or disagrees with our theories. So in explaining the game, you're doing two things. You're allowing the big cricket fan to have his theories justified or no. You're teaching the game in one way to some people. Rahul Dravid told me something very interesting once. He said, with the growth of television became the biggest coach for the boys in the small towns who didn't have a lot of coaching available to them. And so, I mean, there's a very famous story of Sehwag sitting with the bat watching Tendulkar bat. And Tendulkar plays a cover drive. In front of the TV, he plays a cover drive. So there are different roles that television plays to that extent.
How do you just manage to do this, Harsha? Just lead me on, and I don't have to do anything. You just said now, basically, we are teaching the audience on what they cannot see on TV, what's not available to them in picture essence, like what's not obvious. You cannot state the obvious, right? So you are bringing in technique here. So when you're talking technique, you are an indirect coach to millions and millions of people watching the sport live. So does that mean that you should be technically correct and take accountability for it as well? To what extent do you have to take accountability for the technique?
See, if you have made 5,000 test runs yourself, then you understand technique. So you know, if Gavaskar says, look, the ball is swinging, don't play square, don't drive till the ball stops swinging, or only play straight, because if you open the face even a little bit, it will go as a catch to gully or go towards point. Then people will listen. This young kid watching, he'll say, okay, I must learn that. So that is his role, because he has gone out there and made 10,000 runs. My role would be to lead him on, because I know that the average Joe wants to hear this from Gavaskar. So I will, even though I might know the answer, I will lead him on, because he may not understand the common man as well. So suppose you are in the commentary box, suppose you and Bhaji are doing a stint. Both of you have, between you have taken 800 wickets. The average Joe does not understand if two of you are talking about subtleties of drift and drop. So my role is to tell you, listen, this common man doesn't understand that, man. Ye drift kya hota hai? Kaise aata hai? So do you play the wind? Do you play the breeze? I may know the answer, but I have to get it out of you. So sometimes that is the role of the caller, even though he or she may know what is happening, to get it out of him. So if the ball is swinging, I cannot say, listen, batsman, play down the ground, man. Don't open the face of the bat. That SMG has to say, or that Sanjay has to say, or someone who's been out there. So that's why we have different roles. That's the role. That's why we must have a caller and a summarizer.
Right. So then, is it safe to say from a like you get this a lot, right, Harsha, where people are constantly saying, I mean, it could be from the cricketers, it could be from the cricketing audience, it could be from the cricket experts, whoever it might be, that, you know what, Harsha, you haven't played that much cricket, right? And since you haven't played that much cricket, we take offense to what you say. But can you be clear and make a statement saying that you've always been aware that you are the lead on, and not necessarily trampled upon technique or a very sensitive topic and led people on to what they have to say?
It depends on how it is said to you. If someone comes to you and says, "Yeah, kya tujhe kyun bol raha hai yaar?" then you can talk to him in that same language. Suppose someone approaches you aggressively. See, it's interesting that and I've had both. I actually went through a whole era without anybody asking. With the Sachin, Rahul, Lakshman, they didn't. Nobody ever once came up to you and said, "Why did you say that?" Not once.
You are cheeky. You are very cheeky, Harsha. You're trying to.
No,
You're
no,
trying to
no.
bring our
I'll tell you
generation
what.
down.
No, I'll tell you why that has happened also. What happens is with social media, suppose I say Ashwin was not getting drift. Suppose I just say, eh? Somebody on social media will say, "Hey, Pochi man, why are they picking Ashwin in the side?" And it will start to become a debate, which you might see. So you will say, "Sunday, you started this debate." So after the coming of social media, things have changed, and I appreciate that. It's our job to reconcile to that. But if a player comes up to you and says, "How dare you say that Bumrah should not bowl short?" You cannot say that. He is committing the same crime that he is accusing me of. Because he is accusing me of not having played enough cricket to be able to say that, but he has not done enough broadcasting to be able to tell me that. So, in effect, you're accusing you're committing the same crime you're accusing someone else of. But there are power equations, whatever. I actually asked Nasser this recently in one of the programs I was doing. I said, Nas, do people come up to you and say, Nash, you are one of us. Why are you saying this now? And he said, happens all the time. He said, you explain to them, but you never change your opinion because someone has told you that, because then your opinion is not valued. So it's interesting. It happens. Ian Chappell's theory was, Ian Chappell told a player when he came up to him, he said, mate, you've got two options. But Chappelli, being Chappelli, was like that. He said, look, you've got two options. He said, on the top right of your TV, there is a button. You press that and the commentary goes silent. He said, use that. And he said, if you still don't like it, he said, on the left, there's a red button. It'll switch off your TV. But Chappell was an outstanding, one of the great captains of the game. He could afford to say that. At our level, we tend to build relationships. You have to build trust after a while. You know, a player has to know that this man is not letting me down or doesn't have an agenda against me, which we never do.
I genuinely didn't anticipate this to go on for so long, but I cannot leave without asking this question because you just again pushed me to ask this question. So, is it safe to say that in order to achieve excellence, you are an IIMA grad, right? So, in order to want to achieve excellence in whatever you do in life, I assume that's what it is. I've seen your leadership talks. So, is that the reason why sometimes you get into this sort of a mode, trying to achieve excellence in whatever you do in life? You end up making comments or making commentary very, very entertaining for people, very understandable for people. Is that when this breach mark happens of not being able to be diplomatic and please everyone?
You can never do that anyway. You can't please your children. You'll discover as your daughters grow up, you cannot please your daughters. So you'll never
I'm
be
worried
able to
already.
please. You'll never be able to please anybody anyway. So, to some extent, it is a relationship that is always going to have cross currents. There's no doubt about it. And you will discover that after you're finished with the game, when you come in and join us, which you will, that you will discover it is like that too. Okay, now I'll make a prediction. In Australia in '91, I said Sanjay Manjrekar and Ravi Shastri will become good commentators. You watch. There's a reason you say that. You're joining me. I mean, there's no doubt. I don't know if I'll still be around because I wish you have such a long career. I don't know if I'll be around, but you are coming. There's no doubt.
That's so sweet of you, Harsha. Harsha, I've really enjoyed this. I hope a lot of people listening in have really enjoyed what you've said because I've seen the people not even moved from this interaction, not even just switched off 1 second. I can see that very clearly on the feed that I'm getting. But finally, before we sign off, Harsha, anything that you want to say? Is there a career option available as a broadcaster for people who have not played the game, or is it mandatory to just play the game and then only have a broadcasting career? What do you think of it? What do you suggest for all these aspiring website article writers who write about technique and imagine them to be a broadcaster? What is your say for them?
I'll do two or three things. One is you must love the game with no strings attached. You must love the game like a pilgrim goes to a temple. You must want to watch all cricket. A lot of people say, I want to present cricket, but they all want to present test cricket directly. They don't want to watch under 19 cricket. If you are a broadcaster at this level, you must know under 19 cricket. You must know under 23 cricket. If Tendulkar has played a straight drive 100 times, you must still feel the same when he plays that straight drive for the 101st time. So first of all, you must love the game like a pilgrim going to a temple. Second, you must know your role. Today, if I started, I don't know how many games I would get because there's lots of former players coming in. When the former player can tell a story, can communicate to the people, you will always have an advantage. And increasingly these days, she will always have an advantage. There's some very good former players like Mel Jones, Anjum, like Isha Guha, Lisa Stalin. I mean, they all played the game. They understand the game really well. So you have to know your role. I think if you're starting out today, you have one big advantage, which is you have the internet. You can write your own blog and finish making all the mistakes while nobody's watching. Your first blogs will be very scratchy. You can now use the camera. You can do your own pieces to camera till you get the confidence that you're doing it. Plus, you have something to show. When we were starting out, we had nothing to show to a producer saying, "See my work." We didn't have anything to show. So today, at least you have something to show. But just understand that you do not make or break a player's career. It's something I've told a lot of young players as well. I said, no commentator or writer has the power to make you drop a catch or bowl short or bowl a full toss. So don't worry about what they're saying. But sometimes what happens is, as you acquire a following and as you start to get known, as people start to think, "Arey, this guy knows," you start to think, "I have the power to influence people's careers." That is when your downslide starts. So never think that way and just say, "Look, I'm telling people what happened. I'm putting my own perspective." The new generation, the 30-something generation, is very forthright. And their audience doesn't mind them being forthright. We could not be when we were 30. So you have blogs, you have cameras, you have so much social. You can create your own profile. You don't have to go to a game. You got 1,000 followers on your own. You've straight away got an audience of 1,000. So you can do so much like that if you're a young kid starting out. I think the chance of getting into commentary are bleak, but I think becoming an anchor as a way into a broadcast is definitely possible. I would urge everybody not to look down on their language. A lot of people, I see this more in the north, but I see in the south as well, they think I have to know good English. No, why? Be a Tamil commentator. Be a Telugu commentator. What's wrong? You must be able to do commentary in a language where you can express your thoughts. So these are a few things, but you will always make mistakes early on. It's okay. Making mistakes not the end of the world, right? You're the first Ranji Trophy match you played, you were nowhere near as good as you are now. So.
Thank you so much, Harsha. But on a final note, just a parting note from my side, when I see a lot of these articles being written about by website, rookies or young writers who want to catch the headlines, seeing them dissect technique, talk about the game just to catch the headlines, I find, how nascent cricket commentary was when a Harsha Bhogle started, or when a Ravi Shastri started, or a Richie Benaud started. In fact, I heard once Richie Benaud say, sometimes not saying anything for an over is the best commentary that you can give for a viewer. So I just keep getting reminded of this and somehow I've suffered a lot because of that. Not wanting to put your entire intelligence of watching the game out there through an article of wrong technically written pieces. You just hit the nail on the head where you said write and make your mistakes. So that's a great takeaway as far as I'm concerned for a lot of people out there. Thank you so much for doing this, Harsha.
Pleasure.
Sitting on the other side of the fence must have been easy, I suppose, with me being the host.
And now we can go back to the next time we speak. We can go back to our proper roles, where I'm asking you questions. You're bowling off spin, and
I want you to remember one thing, that you have to go easy on me when you're asking questions live, and not remember any of these when you're going up.
No. You're a student too. I still remember that you wanted to make your school quiz team. I still remember all those stories.
Oh my God! How can I go without that? Where is ESPN school quiz?
What a program it was!
Sorry.
What a program it was.
Oh, unbelievable, Harsha. Unbelievable.
So I hope someone start. I'll tell you why I stopped doing that program. There were little kids taking 36-hour, 48-hour train journeys to come to Delhi in winter. And on that one question, I'm asking them that one question that might see them go out in the first round. The kids, man, they're seeing lights, studio, everything. They're a little blank. And if they didn't know the answer, the look on their face as my children were growing up, I could not bear to take that disappointment. Some of them would cry. I couldn't take that disappointment anymore. I started getting a little soft inside. So I think it was time for me to go on. It's time for someone else to revive that program.
It's a great time, this COVID-19 time, Harsha. So it's not a bad idea to go on Zoom calls. These kids are so good with technology that you can do the school quiz on Zoom itself. There's so much time on hand.
Yeah.
And Thank you for doing this in these hard
Pleasure.
times, Harsha. I hope people really enjoyed it and there is takeaways from it. And thank you so much again.
Pleasure.
Till
Thanks.
then, I'll message you offline and you tell me what you felt about it.
Sure. Take care. Bye.
See you. Bye.